What's up, good executive? I'm so used to saying that. What's up, good people? Happy Wednesday. We are back for another day of the Tim Norman with USA versus Tim Norman trial reenactment. I apologize for my tardiness, but I was also preparing for the show that's after the show because I didn't give myself a large enough window to be ready for that next show. So I was like, let me wrap up these few little pieces. So I apologize for my tardiness, but please let me know that you can hear me in the chat by typing either Justice for Dre or Day 3. Justice for Dre or Day 3 to let me know that you can hear me in the chat. And it looks like my poll is gone. Like it's YouTube might be glitching today. Thank you, Trey, Keisha, and Precious, and Margin, and Alice, and Sheila, and everyone else in the chat, letting me know that you can hear me. So today we're moving into day 3. It's day 4. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm all over the place. It's one of them days. It's raining out. I'm already feeling groggy. It's one of those cloudy days, but I've been pushing. So my brain is with us and partially not with us. So it's actually day 4 of the trial. And what we're moving into today is the expert witness testimony from special FBI special agent. One is Bastian Freud. However, we're going to skip his testimony. He testifies to what the cell towers do, like kind of the technical side of cell towers, which was extremely interesting to the nerd in me during the trial. However, I don't think it's going to translate as well for what we're doing as far as a reenactment. However, at the end, towards the end of his testimony, after he explains what cell towers do, how they work technically and all of that, then he talks about how the actual timeline of at what time it pinged Tim wherever, what time it pinged Terica, what's his name? Beats, DJ Beats, et cetera, all the players, Travell, et cetera. And he basically puts the timeline together based on how their cell phones were pinging on various towers throughout St. Louis, and in the case of Terica, all the way through towards Memphis. However, the testimony we will get into today is from another agent as well, and he kind of goes through some of how they were able to track from the financial perspective, the moves of everyone involved. So tonight we have in our cast, we have Robert, who will be acting as Judge Ross, aka the court. We have Shamika, who will be playing the role of Angie Danis. We have Shamika, who will also be doing the role of Gloria Rodriguez, who is Tim's attorney. So we've been hearing a lot from, what's his name? Michael Leonard. However, today we'll also hear from Gloria Rodriguez. And if we get to that testimony today, it's going to be interesting because you see her inadequacies. And then we have Precious, who will be playing both the roles of Andrew Wood and Ed Chandler, aka Big Ed, who is Miss Robbie's and Tim's security, mainly Miss Robbie's security. And I haven't seen or looked up any updates on what Big Ed has been up to. You know, Big Ed had I think it was a motorcycle accident or something a couple months ago, but I haven't seen anything else on it. And then I will be playing the role of Mr. Leonard with his shenanigans as usual. So with that, I'm going to bring up our cast. First, I'm going to bring up Robert. Hello, Robert. We got Precious, and then Shamika. And then I'm going to screen share our transcripts so that you, as the viewing audience, can follow along. And I'm going to tweak it a little bit. With that, we can get started. Whenever you're ready, Robert, you can start at the proceedings for the next morning. September 9th commenced at 9:15 a.m.
Good morning. We have a few different issues that defense has raised. I want to take up the issue related to Agent Wood because it relates to the testimony here today. And then We will take up the other issues when we conclude the testimony. Now, as I understand, we anticipate concluding the government's case this morning. In any event, defense counsel had filed a motion to exclude the testimony of Special Agent Andrew Wood. There is an exhibit that relates to this. I know it was filed late yesterday. I don't know. Well, the government, excuse me, has not filed a written response to that motion. Ms. Danis, Ms. Carroll, anything you want to tell me with regard to the motion?
Your Honor, the first thing I will present to the court is that this was actually an exhibit that was the subject of one of our motions in our trial brief. It was provided to the defense prior to the pretrial conference last week. The final version was provided last night. We omitted slides based on defense's several objections yesterday during Mr. Applebaum's testimony so as to prevent the cumulativeness and not waste the court's time. The other thing I will add, Your Honor, is that this exhibit summarizes many that are in evidence that have not yet been shown to the jury, mostly those related to toll records that constitute about 20,000 pages of the discovery and evidence admitted in this case. So this is evidence the jury has not seen. It is relevant because it puts the text messages and the calls between all the parties into context for the jury and assists them in evaluating that evidence.
Okay. All right. Mr. Leonard, anything else you want to tell me? Again, I know you filed a written motion with regard to this.
I won't regurgitate that, Judge, but just as a couple of follow-up points to the government's argument. Number one, our first notice that they are actually going to call this witness was yesterday at the close of trial. But most importantly, Judge, not only is it extremely cumulative, but it is really closing argument. I've never seen a government in any jurisdiction be allowed to close their case with 100-slide closing argument summarizing the evidence. Well, they got to keep in mind all the crimes he committed. And that's what that is, Judge. There is no doubt about it. And for those reasons, it should be excluded.
Okay. One of the counts in this case is a conspiracy to commit wire and bank fraud. It is intertwined with the other charges. The murder for hire charge, the conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Now, it is common in a conspiracy to commit a bank fraud or wire fraud in that kind of a case. That is going to be a very record-intensive case. Essentially, Mr. Leonard, what you are arguing is that the government can introduce those records, but can't talk about the records, can't produce a qualified person to provide any context or sequences of those records. And I think that's simply incorrect. I think the government can produce a qualified person who can go through records that have been admitted in evidence. And these records have been admitted and put them into sequence, put them into context. I don't think it constitutes closing argument. It does, again, put some context and perspective to those records. It connects different records. Now, again, there are a number of business records that have been introduced in this case. Government type records, again, they are intertwined with text messages, other evidence that has been introduced. Let's see, yesterday when the witness was testifying, who was summarizing certain aspects. I did sustain objections where I thought it was not sequencing or putting into context, but simply rereading an exhibit. So I understand your objection. If you believe that aspects of this witness's testimony are extremely repetitive, you can renew the objection, and I'll rule on it. But conceptually, if he is a qualified person, he can talk about the records. Again, a number of the toll records have been admitted in evidence, but have not yet been shown to the jury. So it does appear to the court that this is proper, appropriate testimony. I think it is beneficial to the jury, and I don't believe that any prejudice outweighs that beneficial effect. I think it is permissible testimony. Now, having said that, again, I understand the exhibit is 112 pages long. I don't know whether or not every one of these pages is going to be talked about. If you have an objection about a particular part of that, raise the objection. Again, I don't think that he can just simply read from an exhibit that's already been read into evidence. But to the extent that he is providing context, sequences, other related testimony, it is admissible. So the objection motion to exclude him will be overruled.
Understood. Judge, I know you want to get rolling, but on the other issue, if we can just get a ruling, because otherwise we will have to send an investigator back out to sit at that guy's house all day long.
Okay. You have filed a motion. It is titled Defendant's Motion for Entry of an Order Directing Mr. Yagnam's Pretrial Services Officer to accept services of process of Mr. Yagnam as a mean of alternative service, and ordering the motion actually reads Mr. Norman to appear. You are talking about Mr. Yagnam?
Yes, Judge. Sorry about that.
And in evidence, you are asking me to order the pretrial services officer to accept summons. Interestingly, your motion has no case law cites referenced to any law that would authorize the court to do that. I don't believe that the court has the authority to do that. Mr. Yagnam was released on bond. Now, he is permitted to work, do other things. He is required to remain within the Eastern District of Missouri. I look back at the record as it relates to his case. I recently denied a motion for him to travel to Kansas City. But again, he can work, and as long as he remains within the Eastern District of Missouri, he is in compliance with his conditions of bond. I know of no law that would authorize the court to compel him to appear. I couldn't compel him to appear for the government. I don't believe I can compel him to appear for the defendant. I certainly, in my view, don't have the authority, the pretrial services officers, to accept that subpoena. So again, if you want to present some law to me to show me that I have the authority, I'm certainly willing to consider it, but to that extent. I'm going to deny the motion at this point in time. And again, if you want to provide me with some authority, I'm certainly willing to consider it.
And I'm not sure if Mr. Leonard mentions that in this, but what we later found out was that they failed on Tim's team to subpoena YL before the trial started. They assumed that the government was going to do it. They assumed that YL would automatically be on their list. And they didn't realize until after the trial started, I think day 2 is when they looked at the list and was like, YL's not on here. They're getting ready to arrest and YL's not on here. What's happening? And so, yeah, that's how this conversation starts. Because then they're sending an investigator out trying to stalk YL, trying to get him to show up. And YL's like, I ain't coming. I ain't got to, so I ain't coming. And they reached out to YL's attorney. I think that comes up here, but just in case it doesn't, because I don't want to forget. But they ended up reaching out to YL's attorney because they couldn't catch YL. And his attorney said, well, the truth is, even if you guys subpoena him, he's going to plead the fifth, so you'll be wasting your time. So, but that's what this conversation is about, because now they've realized one of their key witnesses that could have poked more holes in it, because, you know, YL keeps claiming that Andre was actually there to sign those life insurance policies, even though all the text messages say everything else. But anyway, that's what's happening here. So Mr. Leonard says, we will do that. I would just note, Judge, that you have the authority any day of the week to compel him to appear in this court. And if he refused to appear for a status hearing, you could order him to appear. Whether there was a status hearing or not, you could order him to appear. You clearly have jurisdiction over him.
You're asking me to compel him to appear to testify? And I indicated, I don't believe that I have the authority to compel him to appear to testify for the government or for the defense. You are asking me to use some subterfuge to set a status conference. And again, I know of no authority for the court to do that. So I am going to deny the motion. Anything else?
No, Judge. But just to be clear, we weren't suggesting subterfuge. I was making the point that you have the authority at any time.
Okay. I don't necessarily want to go back and forth with you, Mr. Leonard. It would be subterfuge, because I don't have a basis to set it for a status conference. So it would just be simply for the order to allow you to subpoena him.
This is when it started to get tense, y'all, because Mr. Leonard saw that he was starting to lose because the government was resting their case. And he didn't have enough. And so this is when he started more of his shenanigans, as you'll see, as it turns over to him. So Mr. Leonard says, yeah, that's not what I'm asking. I was making a point that you have jurisdiction over that at any time. I wasn't asking you to set a status hearing. So you're getting smart.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead and get the jury.
He treated him like a little kid, like a teenager throwing a tantrum, and you just ignored him. Like, continue with business. All right. And then at 9:28 a.m., the proceedings resumed in open court.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize again about the delay. It is always my intent that we start promptly when I tell you to be here. But there is always one reason or another. So I apologize for the delay. I appreciate your patience. When we rested at the end of the day yesterday, the government was presenting evidence. Ms. Danis, Ms. Carroll, call your next witness.
A quick question. Sorry, Vell. I saw that we were skipping that witness, right? Because
we sure are. Thank you. I told you I'm late. Thank you. So we're jumping down to what's the next witness? Andrew Wood. And I meant to put where it starts at. My apologies, y'all.
I was like, am I doing that?
Yeah, let's so whenever you see, I'm scrolling as
I'm
well, but
scrolling
when,
now.
when
Where
you
are you
see,
going to?
we're still looking for, but the next witness is Andrew Wood, because we're skipping the expert on the towers, on the cell towers.
Robert's
I think
still
he just
talking to
put
you
it
like
on
you
there.
Mr. Leonard up there, Vell. He's like, where we going?
It's
Oh,
on
wait a minute. It
page
tells you in the beginning.
61. It's 60. It's on page
Yeah.
61, line 21.
All right.
Page what?
You say
61?
61?
Page
Yes.
61.
Okay.
921.
I'm almost there. Okay. Got it. All right.
I'm there.
I'm there.
21.
Hold on.
Hold on
All
just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna start there.
Okay. I'm ready when you are.
61, line 21.
921.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, I'm there.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. I think it's a little bit before that, where
It's
maybe
there.
line
Direct
5,
examination.
where it says the court.
Yes. The court, Ms. Danis, Ms. Carroll, call your next witness.
Oh, yeah, we can go up to line 5. So line 4 is saying 11 a.m. The proceedings resume in open court.
Ms. Danis, Ms. Carroll, call your next witness.
Your Honor, the government calls Andrew Wood, and before Mr. Wood is sworn in, Your Honor, could we please submit government's Exhibit 79? We had omitted that earlier pursuant to our 902 notification.
Any objection to Exhibit 79?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 79 will be admitted then. And step up here, if you would, sir, and the clerk will administer the oath. And if you will speak into the microphone, it will help amplify your voice. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Andrew Wood.
How are you employed, Mr. Wood?
I'm currently an intelligence analyst for the FBI.
Mr. Wood, how long have you been an intelligence analyst for the FBI?
Since 2019.
Were you involved in the investigation into Tim Norman and the murder for hire of Andre Montgomery?
Yes, I was.
As part of that investigation, did you and the members of your team obtain and review records produced pursuant to subpoenas and search warrants to various cellular entities and various travel entities?
Yes.
With regard to the cellular telephone records, how many pages of records would you say you received in this case?
Tens of thousands.
Did you do the same for Google accounts,
Yes.
social media accounts,
Yes.
bank records,
Yes.
and travel records?
Yes.
Did you prepare a summary presentation to assist the jury in understanding those tens of thousands of pages of records?
I did.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd move for the admission for demonstrative purposes of 71.
For demonstrative purposes, any?
Judge, just we renew our objection we spoke about earlier, and it is in the written motion as well.
Okay. The objection will be overruled, subject to the court's ruling. You may proceed with the use of the demonstrative exhibit identified as 71.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can we go to slide 2, please? Mr. Wood, did you obtain records from Southwest Airlines relative to Andre Montgomery's travel?
I did.
Were you able to determine a date on which Mr. Montgomery traveled from Dallas to St. Louis?
Yes. It was March 4th, 2016.
If we can go to slide 3, I want to look at the timing. This is government's previously admitted Exhibit 2E. What are we looking at occurring in 2E?
A few days after Andre Montgomery arrived, there was a text message recovered from Mr. Norman's phone, which is what's pictured in this slide, from a person named Big Ed, which we believe to be Eddie Chandler. It's a picture depicting the victim, Andre Montgomery, in a Sweetie Pie's location.
And is that 2 days after Andre Montgomery arrived in St. Louis?
Yes.
Go to slide 4, please. At that same time, did you also review text messages from someone saved in Mr. Norman's phone as Chris 2?
Yes. There was a text messages from Chris too. Tim Camelhips Norman, at the same time he received the message, said, "I'm alive." And Chris responded, "I know. You know I'm not calling for nothing."
Now, did you determine who that phone was subscribed to?
I did. According to AT&T, the registered user of the phone number saved in the phone was Chris Carroll.
And can you pull that up side by side with Government's Exhibit 81, please? Previously admitted. Who do you know Government's Exhibit 81 to be?
Chris Carroll.
I want to talk to you for a second about kind of the format of these slides as we go through this timeline. Can you describe what's happening on the left-hand side with the yellow and the red text?
Sure. So the red text, the date and time, there is whatever we are currently discussing on this slide. The yellow text above that is going to summarize what we just saw in the previous slides to put that in context of what we are currently talking about.
Okay, slide 5, please. The day before Mr. Montgomery's homicide on March 13, 2016, what occurred pursuant to your records review at 6:49 a.m.?
At 6:49 a.m., this screenshot taken on the phone of the Instagram of the victim was saved on Travell Hill's Google Drive, which was...
Were you able to associate that Google Drive to Mr. Hill through the use of tribal records that we will discuss later on?
Yes.
And after the 649 saving of that screenshot to Mr. Hill's Google Drive at 2:29 p.m., slide 6, what happens?
Mr. Camelhips Norman purchased airfare with American Airlines to travel from Los Angeles to St. Louis.
Can you tell the jury in those red boxes what cell phone number does Mr. Norman list?
That is...
And we are looking at the records on the bottom left corner, that red box. Several of these records we're going to talk about were produced in different time zones. Is that correct?
That's correct.
For American Airlines, is this in Central Time?
It is. Their headquarters is located in Texas.
And for each of these records that we discussed, would we be talking about what time zone those records are in and how you converted them?
Yes.
If we can show 7, please. So, Mr. Norman purchases his flight at 2:29 on March 3rd, 2016. What is this record showing in slide number 7?
So approximately 4 hours after he purchased the airfare, his flight actually departed from LAX. What you are seeing is the manifest from American Airlines that reflects the actual departure time.
When you say actual departure time, is that opposed to the scheduled departure time?
Yes,
It is rarely the same. Is that correct?
I would say so.
And slide number 8, please. Approximately 2 hours, little less than 2 hours after Mr. Norman's flight departs LAX, what text messages are exchanged between Mr. Norman and Mr. Carroll?
So Mr. Camelhips Norman sends a time, 12:10, and Mr. Carroll responds, "I'll be there." I believe that 12:10 is referring to what he's doing to land in St. Louis, because that's very close to the scheduled landing time of his flight.
And the next slide, slide 9, at 9:42 p.m., what activity happens with regard to Mr. Norman's Priceline.com records?
Priceline records for flights that Mr. Camelhips Norman booked his hotel at Chase Park Plaza.
And did he book a stay for that very night for which he was arriving?
Yes.
Based on your review of the records and the flight information, would this booking be something that happened mid-flight?
Yes.
Slide 10, please. At 12:06 a.m., the day of Andre's murder, what time did Tim Norman actually arrive in St. Louis?
So again, the manifest shows he arrived 6 minutes after midnight, the day of the murder.
On slide 11, what happens at 12:06 a.m. when Mr. Norman's flight records indicate he has landed?
He receives a message from Chris Carroll asking, "You close?" And 1 minute after his flight landed, Mr. Camel Hips Norman sent a message that said, "Landed."
Did you also review several social media accounts and communications between them pursuant to your investigation?
I did.
Approximately 4 hours after Mr. Norman's flight landed in St. Louis, the day of Andre's murder, when did Mr. Norman reach out to Terica Ellis on Facebook? Slide 12, please.
So this is a screenshot of Miss Ellis, who works at Bottoms Up's Facebook. It says, "Tim Camel Hips Norman sent her a message. You changed numbers again?" These Facebook records say UTC, which is a coordinated universal time. That UTC is 5 hours ahead of Central Time. So example here, it says 9:03. You have to subtract 5 hours to make it Central Time. So that really occurred at 4:03 Central Time.
Can you go to slide 13, please? Do these call out boxes indicate the time conversion that you referred to?
Yes.
So at 4:03 a.m. on March 14th, Mr. Norman reaches out to Miss Ellis saying, "You changed numbers again?" When does Miss Ellis respond?
About 10:10 in the morning Central Time, she responds, "Yeah," and provides a phone number ending.
2 minutes after Miss Ellis responds to that Facebook message in slide 14, can you describe what happens?
So this is a picture of Mr. Camel Hips Norman's phone. He sent a text message that said, "Hey, trouble." And the contact at the top is the same phone number.
And if we go to slide 15, can you just briefly summarize kind of what the context of this conversation was leading up to the exchange that we see on page 15?
Yes, Bottom Ups Ellis and Camel Hips Norman discussed meeting at the Chase Park Plaza. He provided his room number. She says she arrives and is having trouble getting upstairs. At 11:16, Mr. Camel Hips Norman indicates on elevator is what I read that to be, meaning he's going down to get her from the lobby.
Judge, I'm just going to object to the cumulative nature and relevance. We have been through each one of these. You guys keep proving how guilty he is.
The objection is overruled for the reasons previously stated. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Approximately an hour later, on slide 16 at 12:13 p.m., what activity occurs between Miss Ellis and the victim, Andre Montgomery?
This is a picture of the victim's phone. He received a message from Ms. Bottom Up Ellis, which was the first text message he received from her on that day.
I want to draw your attention to the bottom right corner of that box in red. What time is it that message sent?
12:20 p.m.
What does that message say?
318 Taylor Road, which was the hotel that the victim was staying in.
2 minutes after Andre Montgomery provides his address, who is Mr. Norman's first call to?
That would be Travell Hill. These are the records from Mr. Camel Hip Norman's phone ending in, and you can see the contact card on the left that reflects the phone number is saved in Mr. Camel Hip Norman's phone as Travell nephew.
This is the first time we're seeing these AT&T records here. If you can zoom out for me, if we can go to the next slide, can you describe how these AT&T records are maintained, what timestamp is on them, how you came to these conversions?
Sure. So again, AT&T is a UTC time. So we need to subtract 5 hours from anything you see time-wise on these AT&T records. So for example, in this case, you see the call that is circled in red occurred at 17:22 UTC, which we subtract 5 hours. That means it's happened at 12:22 p.m. Central Time. If you look at the originating number column, that's telling you who made the phone call, and the terminating number is who received the phone call.
If we can go to slide 19, please. 3 minutes after Mr. Norman calls Travell Hill, what activity occurs between Miss Ellis on and the victim Montgomery.
Miss Bottom Ups Ellis sent the victim's message asking what room number he was staying in.
So after 12:25 p.m., we go to 1:14 p.m. and the next slide, a little less than an hour later, we're looking at the phone number ending in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And for Mr. Norman's prepaid phone, what time was that activated?
It says 2:14 p.m. This is a record from Track Phone, which is headquartered in Florida. It figures it's a corrupt state. So the records are at Eastern Time. You need to track 1 hour to make that Central Time. So that would mean at 1:14 p.m., Norman Camel Hip's prepaid phone ending was activated.
And if we can go to slide 21, is that another box showing that conversion of the records again?
It is.
What you just described, can we go to 22, please? 7 minutes after Norman's prepaid phone is activated, what happens with regard to Miss Ellis's prepaid phone ended in?
It is also activated.
I want to draw your attention to this point of purchase information with regard to what does it indicate that point of purchase is?
This is a record that reflects Track Phone sold that device to Walgreens. The address is listed. There is a regional distribution center. It does not reflect the actual individual's Walgreens location that this device ended up at.
Did the track phone records and end once it is sent to a Walgreens distribution center?
Yes,
They don't track it to see which retail store it went to.
they do not.
Government's exhibit, or I'm sorry, next slide, page 23. Again, are you showing the conversion of that time?
Yes, from Eastern to Central Time.
2 minutes after Miss Ellis's prepaid phone is activated at 1:23 p.m., what activity occurs between Miss Ellis's prepaid phone and Mr. Norman's prepaid phone?
So the bottom of Ellis's prepaid phone call, the Norman Camel Hits prepaid phone, the duration of the call was 0 seconds. So it appears to be something to the effect of save my number type activity.
And can we go to slide 25? Did you consult with Special Agent Bastian Frond in determining around the area the location of the phones would have been at this time?
I did.
And is that consistent with the area of the Walgreens on Lindale?
It is.
Slide 26. 5 minutes after both prepaid phones are now active and have contacted each other, what occurs at 1:28 p.m.?
I'm going to renew my objection again. He is just reading text.
Surprise,
Again.
surprise.
It be noted for the record, for the reasons previously stated, the objection will be overruled. You may proceed, counsel.
So at 1:28, the victim and Miss Bottoms Up Ellis exchanged text messages. It ends with Bottoms Up Ellis saying, "On my way."
At 1:39 p.m. on the next slide, does activity again occur between Mr. Norman's prepaid phone and Miss Ellis's prepaid phone?
It does. Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone call to Bottoms Up Ellis prepaid phone for a little over a minute.
And approximately 22 minutes following that, what occurs?
This is a picture of the victim's phone. It reflects he received the incoming call from the prepaid phone for Bottoms Ellis that lasted 7 seconds. He saved this number as Alexis the Great in his phone.
Is this the first phone call from Miss Ellis's prepaid phone to the victim, Andre Montgomery?
It is.
Slide 29, please. 10 minutes later, what activity occurs between the Ellis prepaid phone and Mr. Montgomery?
So on the left here, we have a picture of the victim's phone again. It reflects a missed call at 2:11 p.m. Over on the right, we have the phone records that match what we see on the victim's phone here. That reflects that the Bottoms Ellis prepaid phone called the victim.
And if we can go to the next slide, did you learn through your consultation with Special Agent Froon that occurred in the area of the La Quinta Inn?
I did.
Slide 31, please. At 2:17 p.m., 6 minutes after Miss Ellis called Andre Montgomery from the La Quinta Inn, what activity occurs?
The Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone called the Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone for approximately 20 seconds.
And approximately 8 minutes later, what happens?
Bottom Ups Ellis sent a message to the victims initiating contact on this specific phone number. The victim acknowledges he accidentally contacted her old phone number, and she instructs him to stop using the old phone number.
Is this the first text message between Ellis's prepaid phone and the victim, Andre Montgomery?
It is.
And you indicate at the bottom, do you provide kind of a general summary of what's going on between Miss Ellis and Mr. Montgomery during this time frame?
It does. Over the next hour or so, just some general conversation occurs. Nothing particular specific.
And the next slide, at 3:04 p.m., we are now looking at the phone number belonging to Daryl Howard. What happens with Daryl Howard's phone number?
So what you see here is a record from AT&T from Mr. Camel Hips Norman's regular number. It shows that Daryl Howard called Mr. Camel Hips Norman on his number.
And slide 34, 3 minutes later, based on your consultation with Special Agent Froon, did you determine that Mr. Howard was in the area of the Chase Park Plaza for approximately an hour?
The device linked Mr. Howard's Google account did go to the Chase Park Plaza after that phone call.
If we can go to slide 36, please. At 3:49 p.m., what activities occurring between Miss Ellis on her prepaid phone and Mr. Norman on his prepaid phone?
Miss Bottom Ups Ellis prepaid called the Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone for over 2 minutes.
Page 37, at 3:49 p.m., what is happening between the victim, Andre Montgomery, and Terica Ellis using?
There was a slight gap in communication, and then the victim reinitiated communication at 3:49.
The next slide, at 3:54 p.m., what does Mr. Howard's Google information account or account information indicate happened?
That his device left the Chase Park Plaza.
5 minutes after Mr. Howard's device departs the Chase Park Plaza, again, what activity is there between the Ellis prepaid device and the victim, Montgomery?
Ellis Bottom Up Ellis advised in a text message that she was going to the mall.
Slide 40. At 4:21 p.m., what activity occurred between the Ellis prepaid phone and the victim, Andre Montgomery?
This again is a picture of the victim's phone. It shows he received an incoming call from Bottom Ups Ellis prepaid phone that lasted 2 minutes.
4 minutes later, what happened?
They continued general conversation for a period of time.
And 3 minutes after that, what occurs?
The Camel Hips Norman prepaid phone called the Bottom Ups Ellis prepaid phone for almost 2 minutes.
At 4:28 p.m., at the same time, is there continued activity between Mr. Montgomery and Miss Ellis?
There is general conversation.
And on slide 44, at 4:37 p.m., what happens?
The victim's phone reflects that he received an incoming call from Bottom Ups Ellis prepaid phone that lasted 1 minute.
After that incoming call, approximately 4 minutes later, who does Ellis's prepaid device call?
Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone for approximately 50 seconds.
The whole day on March 14th, Ellis's prepaid device ended in how many numbers does it communicate with?
It communicates with the victim, the Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone, and the phone attributed to Mr. Hill.
Slide number 46. This bank deposit, what time does this occur?
5:11 p.m.
And that's a $30,000 cash deposit?
It is.
What bank does that occur at?
U.S. Bank at 4301 Lindell Boulevard.
Approximately 8 minutes later, can you describe what activity is again happening between the Norman prepaid phone and Miss Ellis?
Over the next 20 or so minutes, they exchanged 3 different phone calls, all lasting in short duration.
And slide 48. Does that indicate that Mr. Norman's phone at that time is in the area of the Chase Park Plaza?
Correct. It indicates that he left the bank at 5:11, and that the last call at 5:35 p.m. indicates that he was back in the area of the Chase Park because his number showed in that area at the same time as the prepaid phone.
At 5:39 p.m., what does Mr. Montgomery advise Miss Ellis of?
That he's going to be leaving around 7 o'clock after she had asked, "What time are you going over to the fairgrounds to shoot the video?"
And after they have that conversation, well, first of all, can you go back, please? What time does that exchange end wherein Mr. Montgomery informs Miss Ellis he is about to head to the fairground?
5:41 p.m.
3 minutes later, who does Ellis call?
That would be the Camel Hips Norman prepaid phone for approximately 17 seconds.
And 51. 1 minute later, what exchange occurs between Miss Ellis and Mr. Montgomery?
She's asking for him to let her know when he leaves, and I'll come get you from there.
Slide 52. At 5:52 p.m., what occurs?
The Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone calls the Bomb Ups Ellis prepaid phone for approximately 1 minute.
Between 5:57 p.m. and 6:01 p.m., can you describe for the jury what we're seeing in these next 4 slides?
These are records of Mr. Camel Hips Norman's account at U.S. Bank. The records reflect that he made a series of ATM deposits at 1400 South Big Bend Boulevard. This first one occurred at 5:57 p.m., and it was a cash deposit of $1,530.
And on slide 54, what was that next deposit?
At 5:59 on the same ATM, he deposited $1,280.
On slide 55, what was that next deposit?
At 6 p.m., he deposited additional $790.
And the next slide?
At 6:01, he deposited a final amount of $720.
And again, on slide 57, was that consistent with the information you learned from Special Agent Pro?
It was.
Slide 58. So between 6:10 and 6:16 p.m., what occurs between the Norman prepaid phone and the Ellis prepaid phone?
The Camel Hip Norman prepaid phone call the Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone on 2 occasions.
And on the next slide, at 6:33 p.m., what happens?
The Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone call the Camel Hips Norman prepaid phone for approximately 30 seconds.
4 minutes after that phone call from the Ellis prepaid phone to the Norman prepaid phone, whose number does Ellis call?
Travell Hill.
Is this the first call between Miss Ellis and Travell Hill?
Yes.
61. At 6:44, what happens?
Travell Hill calls Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone for approximately 44 seconds.
On slide 62, what activity are we looking at from the victim's phone, Exhibit 41?
It shows both outgoing and incoming call of a very short duration with the Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone.
Slide 63. At 7:07 p.m., what message did Andre Montgomery send to Terica Ellis's prepaid device?
He sent the Natural Bridge, which was the location he was ultimately murdered.
And I want to take you to the next slide. Is this the record of what time, including milliseconds, that text was actually received?
Yes. So the Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone received that text message at 7:07 08 p.m. So it's 7 o'clock, 7 minutes, and 8 seconds into the minute.
Approximately 40 seconds later, who does Miss Ellis call?
The Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone for almost a minute and a half.
And several minutes after that call to Norman's prepaid phone, who does Miss Ellis's prepaid phone call?
The next 2 calls are to Travell Hill.
Page 67 at 7:22 p.m. What occurs?
The Bob Ups Ellis prepaid phone called the Norman Camel Hips prepaid phone for approximately 40 seconds.
2 minutes after that 40-second call, who does Ellis's prepaid phone call?
Travell Hill.
Slide 69 at 7:25 p.m. What activity is occurring between Ellis's prepaid phone and Travell Hill?
Bottom up Ellis's phone sent Travell Hill 2 text messages.
Slide 70. What happens after those text messages?
2 minutes after the text message, the Camel Hips Norman prepaid phone calls Bottom Up's Ellis prepaid phone twice.
Slide 71. 7:52 p.m. What is occurring?
The Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone calls Bottom Up's Ellis prepaid phone for 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
7:55 p.m. Who does Miss Ellis call on her prepaid device?
The victim.
Slide 73. What happens at 7:56 p.m.?
The Bottom's Ellis prepaid phone calls the Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone for 13 seconds. And Bottom's Ellis prepaid phone is the area of the crime scene.
Is that depicted on slide 74?
It is.
Slide 75. At 7:58 p.m., who does Victor Montgomery call?
He received a phone call from the Bottom's Ellis's prepaid phone.
8:01 p.m. What happens between Travell Hill and Terica Ellis's prepaid phone?
Hill sent the Bottom Ellis's prepaid phone a text message.
What happens 2 minutes later?
At 8:03, the first 911 call was received advising that a shooting had occurred.
Slide 78. At 8:03, 1 minute after that shooting had occurred, who does Ellis's prepaid phone call?
Similarly to the 911 call, Bottom's Ellis calls the Camel Hips Norman prepaid phone for 23 seconds again from the area of the crime scene.
3 minutes after that phone call, who does Norman's prepaid phone call?
Camel Hips Norman's regular phone.
Thank you for correcting me.
Calls Daryl Howard for 50 seconds.
And where is Norman's prepaid and subscribed phone located at that time?
The St. Louis airport.
Approximately 8 minutes later, what occurs?
The Camel Hip Norman's phone and the Bottom's Ellis prepaid phone begins to exchange some phone calls.
And in slide 82, is that when Miss Ellis's phone is consistent with traveling back to Memphis?
It is.
Approximately an hour after Mr. Howard, Daryl Howard, received that call from Tim Norman. At 8:06 p.m., what does his location data show?
His Google account reflects his device was in the area of Chase Park Plaza from 9:02 p.m. to 9:08 p.m.
6 minutes?
Correct.
How many minutes after Andre's murder did the defendant Norman call Daryl Howard?
Counsel, can I have you approach the bench for a moment?
Yes.
The proceedings were then held at sidebar, which means we couldn't hear what they were saying. They were just playing the white noise.
I'm going to stop you because of the form of that question. Because you are asking when Mr. Norman placed the call. All he can testify to is the phone.
The phone number.
So you have to rephrase that question.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
He trying to help them out. He like, wait a minute, you misspoke. Proceedings resumed in open court.
Counsel, if you will rephrase the question.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Wood, how many minutes after Andre's murder did the phone subscribe to Mr. Norman called Daryl Howard?
Approximately 4 minutes.
And slide 84. At 11:48 p.m., what activity is occurring between Miss Ellis's prepaid phone and Mr. Norman's prepaid phone?
The Bottom's Ellis prepaid phone called the Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone for approximately 29 seconds. And Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone is still in the area of the airport here in St. Louis.
Slide 85. At 12:50 a.m., what occurs?
Camel Hips Norman's phone ending that he's a subscriber to a missed phone call from Travell Hill.
Now, this is the Hill phone ending in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is this the same phone? Is this the same phone that's saved in Mr. Norman's contact as Travell nephew?
Yes.
Slide 86. At 1:27 a.m., what occurs?
Camel Hips Norman's phone ending missed phone call from his mother.
And did you determine that that was his mother's phone from the information you acquired from Andre Montgomery's phone device?
Yes.
Did you also examine subscriber information?
I did.
8 minutes after he misses, the Norman subscribed phone misses a call from the Robbie Montgomery subscribed phone. What message does Mr. Norman send to Eddie Chandler?
Call Sarah Pie's mama ASAP. She got to go to the police department. He provides the same phone number.
Slide 88. Are these Delta Airline records for Mr. Norman on March 15, 2016?
They are
What time do they indicate his flight actually departed St. Louis?
at 1:55 in the morning on the morning of Tuesday, March 15th.
And can you tell us what number is used in these Delta Airline records that is attributed to Mr. Norman's travel records?
Okay.
Next slide, please. Is that a number that is subscribed to Mr. Norman that we have discussed?
It is.
Slide 90. The next morning at 8:43 a.m. Is that consistent with the testimony or, I'm sorry, your consultation with Special Agent Froon?
I think they were
So
saying Freud, even though it's spelled differently, but I think they were saying Freud for his name.
Fraud. Okay, thank you. Because I'm like, every time I'm Agent Fraud, that's what it looks like. Those three phones being in the area of LAX.
Yes, the Camel Hips Norman's prepaid phone, and then the two phones subscribed to by Camel Hips Norman in the area of LAX.
Slide 91. Again, March 15, 9:20 a.m. What is occurring in Terica Ellis's bank accounts?
She makes a series of two deposits into her bank account that is a total of $7,360.
Are we looking at the first deposit here in the amount of $4,340?
We are.
And on slide 92, how much is that deposit for?
$3,020.
Skip ahead a day to March 16, 2016, beginning at 2:12 p.m. Can you describe what occurs?
Camel Hips Norman subscribed phone and then called Daryl Howard for over 2 minutes.
Slide 94. What occurs at 2:15 p.m.?
Howard then calls Camel Hips Norman back and they speak for another 6.5 minutes.
Slide 95.
At 2:31, Camel Hips Norman's phone ending called Howard and he did not answer the phone.
96.
Howard calls Camel Hip Norman's for 20 seconds at 2:33 p.m.
Mr. Wood, did you examine the metadata associated with photographs taken from the Google account belonging to Daryl Howard?
I did.
Does the metadata establish when government's exhibit 27B previously admitted when that photograph was taken?
It does.
What time was that photograph taken?
This is stored in UTC, so we need to deduct 5 hours, but that would be 3:03 p.m. Central Time.
So 3:03 Central Time, slide 99, 16 minutes later, where is Mr. Howard's Google device consistent with being?
In the area of Travell Hills residence.
Slide 100, at 8:23 p.m., did you again examine metadata associated with Travell Hill, the Travell Hill account?
I did.
And at 8:23 p.m., are there two photographs taken?
There are.
What did you note about this particular photograph here on the side?
The rubber bands in the picture were blue and brown. And when compared to the money that Daryl Howard took a picture of, they also had blue and brown rubber bands holding the money together.
Can we put this side by side with exhibit 27B, please? Are these the rubber bands you are referencing?
They are.
Thank you. Slide 102. On March 17, 2016, is Miss Ellis making additional bank deposits?
She did. She deposited an additional $1,900 cash to her bank account using an ATM.
At 3:18 p.m. I'm sorry, on 3/18/2016, 4 days after Andre's murder at 3:55 p.m., what happens?
Camel Hips Norman subscribe phone calls the subscribe phone for Wadi Yagam, and they speak for almost 22 minutes.
And 2 hours later, who does Mr. Norman subscribe a phone call?
Surprise, surprise. Forrester's Financial for over 6 minutes.
If we can go to slide 107, please. March 22nd, 2016. Did you review travel records with regard to Terica Ellis?
I did.
Did you determine that she traveled with her mom, Sonia Davis, and her daughter to Los Angeles?
Yes.
And slide 108 and 109. Did you determine that through your consultation with Special Agent Fraud that Miss Ellis's mother's phone was in the same area as two of Mr. Norman's subscribed phones?
That's correct.
I want to take you to slide 112. What text messages are we looking at? This is sent on October the 16th, 2018. What text messages are we looking at in that red box?
There's a text message from Camel Hips Norman to his attorney.
And what does it say?
I was in Cali when he got killed. They're discussing the murder of Andre Montgomery.
What time was Andre Montgomery killed?
8:02.
And what time and date did Mr. Norman's flight actually leave St. Louis based on Exhibit 31A, page 2?
Several hours later at 1:51 in the morning of March 15th, 2016.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Leonard?
I'm trying to see because I'm running tight on time. I'm gonna end it here for tonight, just because I gotta get ready for our next show.
Your shenanigans.
I'm gonna check in with the cast and see if we could possibly do this on 2 nights in a week. That way we can wrap this up. But I'll survey y'all and see what everybody's schedule is looking like. But thank you to our cast. Please put your hand clapping emojis and your cheer emojis in the chat. I love that the government, towards the end, they just laid out everything methodically, chronologically, point by point. It's undeniable what is actually happening here. But any final thoughts? We'll start with Robert.
This is really something else to see how this is developed. But I'm glad the government got their case together because it shows that this was both cynical and methodical, the way this was carried out. Tim Norman, even though he claimed he wasn't in the vicinity of the murder, conducted everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
He was behind it all. And the people that are contacted here are due to the exclusion of Tim Norman himself.
Mm-hmm.
So this shows even more how guilty he was.
Absolutely. Yeah, the closing argument, they definitely put all that together, and it's poetic how they put it all together in the closing argument. I can't wait till we get to that part. But thank you so much, Robert. We'll be seeing you in our next episode, and thank you for joining us. Glad to see that you're feeling better and all that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
All right.
And Shamika.
Yes.
Oh, okay. You went, your avatar disappeared, but you're here. Good.
Oh, okay. Thank you again for letting me read. I think this just shows, I mean, if you had any doubt, there could not be that many coincidences in the world. I think this evidence here was just, I mean, you really would have to be in some kind of denial or just not wanting to face it, because
Mm-hmm.
there's no explanation. It's just too many things that it all lines up. So, you know, they don't use the phones.
Right. Because they were tracking everything from the phone usage to bank deposits.
Everything from the millisecond.
Exactly. And then he lied to his attorney and said that he was in LA and they got the flight records.
Right.
Proving that he was flying back home. Craziness. Well, thank you so much. And we will be chatting via text.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. And Precious G, any final words for our audience before we jump on over to the main channel?
Oh, no. I enjoyed this. Being an intel analyst for like almost 30 years, I was like, yes, I love that, because this is how we do it. So I really enjoyed it tonight because, I was like, get him. Because I'm like, Leonard, your cross-examination is going to be garbage because the proof is in the pudding. I'm like, yes, that's the part I was waiting for. Yes, an analyst getting him. But I enjoyed it per usual. My shenanigans, I have to spice it up.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We
I'll
appreciate
see
it.
y'all next week.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you in a few minutes in the next
Oh
live.
yeah, I'm going to the next channel, but you know what I'm saying, the reading.
All right. Yes. So what we're doing is at 7:45 ish. Give me enough time to get the other show completely set up. We will be doing our Surviving Darius Crooks live over on the main channel. It is already scheduled and up there, and a text community reminder is going to be going out probably around 7:40 or whatever. So I will see all of you over there, and thank you so much for spending time with us over here on the Reality Chronicles channel. My stepchild, my child I bear to take care of. Please hit that like button and that subscribe button if you have not as of yet. There is definitely more to come on this channel once we work our way through the remainder of this transcript reenactment, which has been a pleasure. So with that, until next time, until next time, when we come back with our next reenactment, make sure to take care and be blessed.
Justice!